Hey, y'all, and welcome back to No Longer Allowed with Kristen. Today, we are talking about the small shifts that can change everything for you. I spent years, y'all, running on autopilot. And here's the thing about autopilot, it's going to get you somewhere, but it's just nowhere where you actually want to go. So ask yourself right now, before we even dive in, does your life look fine on paper, but just feels so completely off on the inside? Are you going through the same routine wondering why nothing actually changes? Do you kind of feel guilty that you should be grateful for the life you have, even if you think something is still off? That's not a discipline problem, y'all, like we're led to believe. That is an awareness problem, and nobody is talking about that. So I'm going to take y'all back just a few years, and I promise I'm not going to go that far back because then we would be sitting here for 8 hours, and I'm not going to do that to y'all. But I want y'all to understand where I was so you can understand why I'm here. So back in like 2021, 2022, I was living what felt like our dream life at that time. Nate's business was thriving. I had landed what I would have called at that time my dream job. I was a school nurse. And it was the perfect schedule. Everything just felt right in our lives. We were taking these vacations that I really only had dreamed of taking. And then I've kind of felt like something started shifting in me. And I took another job. And so this new job, I was able to work from home, and it felt like I had like more freedom in my life, more flexibility. I could get everything done and I could keep up with everything like at home, all our routines, stay on top of the house, to even taking care of myself. Everything was just, it was great. It was almost even better. And then I remember I walked into my daughter's fifth grade orientation, and there was this gut feeling in my stomach that this just was not right for her. This wasn't the right place that she needed to be. I still can't even fully explain that feeling. I guess it's more like a mother's intuition that you just happen to stumble upon sometimes in certain situations. And acting on that gut feeling, y'all, it sent my whole life into a tailspin. Not because it was wrong, it was absolutely the right call for her, but because every right decision in my life seemed to come with a massive disruption attached to it. We found her a new school, which ended up being about 15 minutes away from our house, which meant I was losing my home base of work, and I'd be working from my parents' house instead of my own. And that shakeup in routine, it took me somewhere I did not expect to go. And when I tell y'all, I completely lost myself. And if anybody knew me before, I was very into my health. I was very into my fitness. And after working so many years of night shift as a nurse and now working this like normal job schedule times, I had really begun to love my mornings and I was always a morning person, but like I could fully embrace my morning person identity. And all of a sudden, I just couldn't even get out of bed. I was waking up at the last minute. I was rushing out the door. I wasn't even getting myself properly dressed half the time. I literally was just surviving my morning. And I remember there was just this one day I woke up and I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't recognize who I even saw. Now, like looking back on it, what I thought was you would just call that depression. But what was happening to me was an identity shift that I needed to work through. But at the same time, I just felt so lost. And here's where it gets real for me because this wasn't just about the school change. This is also around the time I was realizing that some of the people in my life were just making everything worse for me. And I was already in a funk. And I was surrounded by people who were just pulling me further down into it. And that's what we discussed in the last episode. And these two things compounding on each other, it was a lot for me to handle. Now, I do want to acknowledge that I know from the outside my life doesn't look like I've had any devastating losses. And I'm not comparing my story to anyone who has been through real tragedy. But what I kept experiencing over and over was identity lost. And every time I got my footing, something would shift, and I'd have to mourn that old version of myself before I could become the next one. And that cycle of mourning your old self over and over is exhausting in a way that's really hard to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. So at some point, I had to have a very hard conversation with myself. What are you doing right now is not working, and you have a choice. You can keep doing hard things that are keeping you in the slump, or you can start doing the hard things that are going to make you better. Because here's what I realized. My life was already hard because I made it seem so hard. The 50-minute drive, it was already hard. The routine, it was already hard. I just wasn't choosing the hard things that were going to move me forward. So I started looking at my mornings because my mornings were getting hijacked, completely hijacked. Waking up at the last minute, picking up my phone before I even hit my feet to the floor, scrolling for 20 minutes while my whole morning just slipped away. Starting every single day already behind and already dysregulated. And I made a decision. I decided small tweaks, intentional choices, protect my morning. And here's what I want you to understand about those small tweaks. They didn't just fix my mornings, they cracked something open for me. Because when you stop running on autopilot and you actually sit with yourself, be uncomfortable with yourself, sit in the joyful moments. In the quiet, you can actually see what's possible for your life. That awareness started coming, light bulbs started firing, and I could finally start calling out my own patterns, calling out my own cycles, things that I thought were just normal, just how I was. I could finally see them clearly for the first time. And that awareness, that's what led to everything. The work I now do, this podcast that you're listening to, the coaching business that I have started, all of it have started with small intentional shifts that created enough stillness to finally see clearly. Without that awareness, I would have never found my purpose. I would have never known what I was actually capable of. I would have kept running on autopilot, wondering why my life just kept feeling like it was going absolutely nowhere. And so actually, while I was writing out this episode, it led me to create something that I want to give to y'all. And I'm calling it the 10-day shift. It is going to be a free challenge. I want to call it a challenge. It's not going to be your typical challenge, though. This is going to be 10 days of intentional daily shifts designed to get you out of autopilot and into awareness. It's not going to be like a boot camp. It's not going to be homework. I'm not going to have you do so much work outside of this. But it's a starting point that I completely wish I had when I was standing in front of that mirror and I did not recognize myself. I'm going to be putting some details up about this very soon, so make sure you're following me on Instagram so you don't miss the announcement, because this one's going to be so good, y'all. And as always, I want to make sure by the end of my episodes that you always can walk away with just 3 things that you can start practicing today. And so for the first one is number 1, autopilot will take you somewhere. Make sure it's somewhere you actually choose. Start paying attention to how you're moving through your days, not to judge yourself, but just to see it clearly. Number 2, small intentions create awareness, and awareness is where everything changes. You don't need a massive overhaul. You need to just start with one thing. Just find one thing in your life and one moment in your day that belongs to you always. And number 3, you don't always have to have it all figured out, because you never will have it always figured out. You just have to be willing to start. The version of yourself that you keep almost becoming is not that far away. She just needs you to stop running long enough for her to catch up to you. So again, as always, thank y'all so much for being here. This one was close to my heart. If it resonated with you, share it with someone, because this is how we grow. I'm Kristen Falgoust. This is No Longer Allowed, and running on autopilot, living someone else's version of your life, that is no longer allowed. I'll see y'all in the next episode.